Hi, we're Quaint and Curious Volumes. My name is James. It's the beginning of June, and I thought I'd come on here and do something I haven't done for a while, which is sort of a transition video. What I read in May, what I'm planning to read in June. May was surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, but May was a very productive. It was a good reading month. I read a lot of stuff. I finished a lot of things. So let me get into it. I think in May I finished reading, or rather listening to, the Leonard Cohen biography "I'm Your Man" by Sylvia Simmons. It's from I think 2014, and I listened to it on Spotify. But so it was published before Leonard Cohen died in 2016. Um, it's just a great, you know, full scale biography of a really, for me, an important musician and songwriter. You, Leonard Cohen, um, he's kind of, I don't know, there's something a little bit tacky about a lot of his stuff, but he means it. And he's got a limited range. If you've heard him sing, particularly his later stuff, that's the case. But also sort of the realm of topics that he addresses. But it's unusual, also. It's small, but it's unusual, and it's his own. And anyway, I'm talking way too much about this one book. It's really well done. She was able to interview Leonard Cohen, a lot of people who knew him. So yeah, if you're interested in Leonard Cohen, that's probably the go-to book. There's a lot of other ones, but that's probably the one that'll give you everything you want. Let's see. I also for May horror mayhem, is that what it's called? Anyway, for the horror event, I read The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. And I mentioned that last month I read Treasure Island and loved it. The first time read for me. It was a first time read of Jekyll and Hyde for me. So, boy, what it really does suck you in. And like some other classic horror, Frankenstein for one, the kind of pop culture version of this story is a little bit misleading about what Mr. Hyde is actually like. I mean, the broad strokes are right, but Mr. Hyde is not what he's usually portrayed as. Though he has something in common with the other the other horror book I read this month, which was The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Oh my! Another first time read for me, and another strong recommendation. This is fantastic. But right, so Mr. Hyde and Hill House have in common that when people see them, they're kind of uneasy. Just looking at them makes them uncomfortable, right? I mean, I guess this is a standard thing in horror, right? Just the sort of uncanny, the unsettling. But yeah, so Jekyll and Hyde, it's really short. It's Victorian but short and atmospheric, and it really moves along. It's got all these Victorian things about the secret journals and letters being lab equipment. It's great. It's great. And Hill House. So The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I'd read some of her better known stories, and We Have Always Lived in the Castle. This is kind of like that. I mean, it's a very different story. It's a haunted house story, but a modern haunted house story, even though it's from the 40s or 50s. But the people in it are aware that they're in a haunted house story, if you know what I mean. So they're throughout sort of making reference to, isn't this kind of crazy that we're here investigating this haunted house? The setup is there's an old abandoned house purported to be haunted, and an anthropology professor rents it for the summer to conduct experiments to see what he can find out about haunting, and he enlists the help or the assistance of some people whom he has sought out because they've been involved in paranormal activity before. Um, so so there are two young women, and then those are pretty much the ones. And then there's a young man who is the heir to Hill House, and he who had to be included for contractual reasons, I think. And then there's a housekeeper and a groundskeeper who are kind of come in for the day and prepare food, and they're very strange characters as well. So look, I can't recommend this book strongly. It's really short. It moves right along, and Shirley Jackson's just a fantastic writer. In the Penguin Classic edition, it has a fantastic introduction, but I read it after the book, and yeah, it spoils everything. So if you get this and you like reading the book, the introduction is really good, but it spoils everything. So read it after. Um, in general, for Penguin Classics, if you don't want to be spoiled, don't read the intro. Let's see. I also read I, Robot by Isaac Asimov, and it was in my Libby hold list for a very long time. Then it popped up, so there you go. I read I, Robot, and on the Kindle. You know, it was enjoyable. It wasn't fantastic. Asimov, I don't know. To me, very creative, very imaginative. The ideas are really good. The characters are kind of, they just sort of sit there. And there's some memorable ones. These two engineers who are kind of put upon and always get sent to deal with these troublesome robots. The sort of central character is a I guess she's like a robot psychologist, is I think what she's called. And for a book written in the 40s, very good about a very kind of modern female character, except for a couple of places. But she's often the most competent and smart person in the room, and people respect her, and so uh, it's not really retrograde in the way that some stuff where there's a female character from the 40s might. Anyway, I'm not. You don't need me to tell you about that sort of thing, but um, just like the ideas are good and interesting to think about, because this is where he kind of explores the laws of robotics, so called, that a robot will never hurt a human or through inaction allow a human to come to harm. Um, and then the second law is a robot will preserve itself as long as it doesn't conflict with the first law. So it's this kind of system, and in the book it explores ways that this system is tested. These rules kind of sometimes are the edge cases, as it were. So that's interesting, but it doesn't often make for the best reading experience, in my opinion. It is short, it's very concise, and when they talk about robots, it's more not robotics in the way of what you would see in a car factory where there are arms that are screwing things into place. It's robots in the sense of the artificial intelligence of the robots. So these are things that are kind of more relevant today than they were then, and so good to think about. I will be thinking about some of these issues for a long time, and probably if you read it or if you have read it, you will be too, as you encounter and deal with and work with artificial intelligence as things progress. Let's see. So, okay, there was another short book that I read, which was One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich. I also read this on Kindle. It's a classic by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the Russian novelist, or Soviet era Russian novelist, who was a refugee in America for a very long time, and then after the Soviet Union fell, he returned to Russia. This is a short, very intense book that Uh, I recommend this to you if you're interested in gulags and in kind of arbitrary exercises of power and injustice. The main character, Ivan Denisovich, he's almost never referred to by that name in the course of the book. He's called Shukov, I think. He's a very competent man. He's in prison for a term of 10 years for treason, of all things. He did not commit treason, but what happened was during World War II, he was in the Soviet army. He was captured by the Germans, and he escaped. And the fact that he escaped led the Soviet officers to whom he returned to say, the Germans wouldn't let you escape. You're obviously a spy. So there you go. You're in the gulag for 10 years. And being in the gulag is not, you're not sitting in prison, lifting weights. You're out doing construction. You're building things. And so at this point, at the point of this book, Denisovich has been in the gulag for a long time, and he's been in other gulags before the one that he's in now. He's also dealing with other people who have been sentenced to 10 and 25-year sentences for even smaller infractions against the state. There is, early in the book, references made to this one building in the prison camp where they're staying. It's a jail, and it's made out of stone. It's the only stone building in the camp. And and people will refer to it as, oh, you'll get sentenced, you'll get 10 days in the hole, I think is how they put it, right? This is the sort of punishment to keep people in line if you're caught with something a tool you're not supposed to have, or something like that. You'll get sentenced to 10 days in the hole. At the end of the book, we find out that 10 days in the hole is not really a death sentence, but it's effectively a death sentence because it will damage your health to such an extent that you'll probably never really recover, and you'll eventually perish in prison. Even being injured, even being sick, is not an excuse for malingering in this prison camp. The camp physician believes that work is the best cure for illness, so he'll put his patients to work, gardening and carrying rocks around. So, look, it's one of these kind of fiendish contraptions. You enter this world and you see how horrifying it is on every side, and some of the small ways in which people try to keep their humanity. So it is keep their humanity, keep their pride, keep their health and spirits up. It's really something, food for thought. So yeah, another strong recommend for One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Let's see. What else did I read? I finished, and I've talked about this already, I finished The Fugitive at the beginning of the month by Marcel Proust. And I also finished, I'll save that for the end. I also read The Simple Truth. I'd read this it's a slim volume of poetry, less than 80 pages. I read it over a few months, a poem or two here and there. I love this poet, Philip Levine, and these are some. I think this is the first book I read by him a long time ago, back in the '90s, and I found it again and read through it. It's just wonderful. Not everything in it really connected with me, but what does, it hits pretty hard. I did a Poetry Thursday on Philip Levine a couple months ago, and I read a poem from that book. So if you're interested, check that out. Let's see. I finished reading Paintings in Proust by Eric Carpels. Anyway, this is a companion to In Search of Lost Time by Marcel Proust. If you've read any of it, you know that the narrator is a big fan of fine art, painting, architecture, sculpture, and there are a lot of references to paintings. This book kind of goes through in the order at which things are discussed in Proust's volumes, and it will say, for example, it'll give you like a little synopsis of where this painting is referred to in the book. So, at a party given by the Prince and Princess de Guermantes, the narrator watches as Baron de Charlus individually greets le tout Paris, right? And then it's a quote from, a quote translated to English from In Search of Lost Time, where he mentions a particular work. And it would say, there was more in it than pride, and the very word festivity suggested to the man with aesthetic gifts the luxurious, rarefied sense that it might bear if it were being given not by people in contemporary society, but in a painting by Carpaccio or Veronese. And then, so there will be little reproductions of paintings by Carpaccio and Veronese that are probably the sort of thing that Proust was thinking of, right? So it's very useful if you're reading In Search of Lost Time and you want to get some of that context. If when he mentions Poussin, it doesn't immediately spring to mind what Poussin looked like, right? So it's really recommended. The only complaint I have is, and these are reproduced in full color, is really nice. Some of them are, they're a little small. It's not meant to be, a great art book, but it's good enough to give you an idea. But some of them are a little bit small. But if you're going through Proust, get yourself a copy of Paintings in Proust by Eric Carpellas. And then the last thing that I read, and I finished it yesterday, so in June, but it was a book called Time Regained, which is the 7th volume of In Search of Lost Time. So yes, I finished it. I finished À la recherche d'un temps perdu, and I'm pretty pleased about that. I will do a review of that later this week. And let me just say, this was probably the fastest read for me of any of the volumes. Definitely the most enjoyable. They say he makes it all make sense at the end. It all comes together at the end. It really does. And it's fantastic. So, if you're, I don't know, can I recommend that you read all 4,000 pages of this series? I'm not sure, but it really it was worth it in the end for me. I'll talk more about that in another video. So what am I going to do in the month of June? It's June on the Range. I've got a copy of Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. This is one of the longest westerns. Some say the greatest western ever written. And I'm reading this for the first time, a buddy read with Randy Ray, the literate Texan, who has also selected this for his book club, the Lone Star Book Club. I'm also buddy reading it with, Christopher Russell is also buddy reading it with Randy Ray. So by the transitive power of buddy reads, we're buddy reading it. I'm also going to continue with my read through, my 18-month-long read through of the Arabian Nights. Doing that with a group of people, including Gavin from Genre Books and Debs at Rainer Reads Stuff. I think someone else joined us recently, and I've forgotten your name, and I apologize. But we're doing this. We're supposed to have a live stream to discuss our May selection this weekend, next weekend. I'm behind. Anyway, I've got to get caught up on this. Then I'm also reading Civilization in the Civilization of the Middle Ages by Norman F. Cantor. I'm kind of going slowly through this one, so I don't know if I'll finish it this month, but that's my medieval book for the year, I guess. I've been listening to, since it seems to be lately my thing, the rock autobiographies and memoirs. I've been listening to Earth to Moon, the memoir of Moon Unit Zappa, which I'm listening to on Spotify. I'm almost halfway through. It's boy, the Zappa is what. I'll have to do a review of it, because it's a really good memoir. She's still a teenager at the point I am, but she had a hit song, a big hit, and it was the biggest hit her father ever had. She was not ever trained as a musician, despite having a world famous rock musician as a father. And she didn't know they were making a record when she recorded Valley Girl. It was just a thing she did, making fun of some girls that she heard at the mall, and it became a big cultural phenomenon, even beyond the hit record. So she's at the point I am. She's had her hit record. She's kind of trying to launch a career as an actress, appearing in small roles in TV shows like Chips, if you remember that. Um, it's an interesting thing. She talks about the small private school that she goes to, where she had a crush on Sam Harris, and I'm pretty sure it's the Sam Harris of podcast and Four Horsemen of New Atheism fame. So that's pretty funny. Um, but yes, you didn't want to be one of Frank Zappa's kids. Let me just leave it. Look, I don't know what your childhood was like. It might have been rough, and I'm sorry. But yeah, Frank Zappa, not a good father. That's my hot take for today. Anyway, so I'll be doing that. There'll probably be some other. But I've got another. Oh, hold on a second. I've got another Western that I might sneak in for June on the Range. It's a Louis L'Amour. It's one of the Sackett novels. It's called Ride the River. I have a couple of other Louis L'Amours that I've picked up over the last year. I don't think they're Westerns, though. There's like one called Off the Mangrove Coast, which I think more modern adventure, and then I have a collection of short stories. Well, anyway, this is an honest to God Louis L'Amour Western. It kind of looks like maybe it's an American Girl story. Anyway, it's one of the Sackett novels. It's not the first one. I don't know where it falls in the chronology. I don't know anything about it. But anyway, it's short. I've read the first couple of pages, and it looks like fun. So I'm going to try and fit that one in also after I've read Lonesome Dove. Lonesome Dove so far really good. Really enjoying it. So all right, that's all I got for you. This has gone on long enough. Thanks for watching. Bye.